All right. I wanted to make a quick follow-up video to the video I just put out on the supposed suicide of Donald Tober, which happened exactly 74 years after the discovery of Elizabeth Short's body. And Elizabeth Short is known as the Black Dahlia in the media. And an observation that I've been making is that this gentleman, Ed Edwards, is there's a theory out there that he is behind not only the Black Dahlia murders, but there is an author, or this guy who put out a book. It's Detective John Cameron, who claims that not only was this guy Ed Edwards behind the Black Dahlia killing, which at the time I think he would have been a child, and I'll play this video later and you'll see how ridiculous the whole idea is that one man, and if you look at him, he's a big fat slob. How could this big fat slob here be behind such? He would be the greatest mastermind of all time, that he would be behind not only the Black Dahlia murders, but the Lacey Peterson murders, Jean-Benet Ramsey, and he's also this John Cameron claims that he's also the Zodiac killer. But I think this guy is definitely behind some killings, which he was tried and convicted for. But I think he's also symbolic because I think it's not one person behind all these murders, but it's a group of people. So it's not possible that one man could be behind all of these murders, but it would make a lot more sense if a group of people were behind him, because it would be very difficult. It would be a logistical nightmare to orchestrate, to be in so many places. And they say that he was poor too. Yet this detective, John Cameron, says he set up a counseling practice in California, and that's how he got to do the Lacey Peterson murder, because supposedly he was their counselor. So I'm going to show you why this guy is symbolic of all these murders, and that is because Edwards equals 74 and 115, just like killing equals 74 and 115. Not to mention the 43. Is that a prime number? 43, the 14th prime. Okay, so there is this letter that is associated with the Black Dahlia murders. And they claim it was written, it's a suicide note. They found it by some clothes that were left on the beach, and the note was tucked into some boots. And the story is they presumed that the person committed suicide by going out into the ocean and drowning themselves. But if you see, they say there's this code, this hidden message encoded within this letter. And you see they have the words Ed Burns highlighted in red. So they say this letter has this encoding of this gentleman's name, who they claim is Ed Edwards, who I believe was just a young boy at the time. But look at the gematria of Ed Burns. Ed Burns equals 83. Just like Black Dahlia equals 83. But look at the connection that it has to killing as well. The 43. And does murder have 43? No. But you see the 106? Look at black in the same cipher equals 106. And look at the 29. Ed Burns equals 29. So you can see why that's a fitting name for someone that they want to put the blame on for the Black Dahlia murders. So Ed Edwards, what? And let's look at Ed Edwards. So strange name, right? Ed Edwards, Edward, so Ed for short. And when you run Edward the short way, it also equals 83 and 38. Just like murder equals 83 and killing and death equal 38. So pretty crazy. And you see the 52, Black Dahlia also equals 52. So what is Edward? What's interesting is just his first name, Edward. Satan equals 55, as well as 35. And Ed Burns equals 29. 29 is the 10th prime number. Satan equals 10. So let's play this video, and I want you to see how ridiculous a concept this whole thing is. But it makes 100% perfect sense if you've been following gematria, if you follow someone like Zachary K. Hubbard, or if you do decodings yourself. It will all make sense that Ed Edwards is symbolic of what's really going on, and that it's groups of people with ancient knowledge that they keep hidden from the masses that are really behind these very strange murders that are all done in very ritualistic fashion. So let's watch.
Megan Kelly, and we begin today with Ed Edwards. Ever hear of him? Me neither. But he is potentially one of the most prolific serial killers of our time. This is a story about 2 jailbreaks, several murders, a criminal so good at pretending to be reformed that he talks his way onto a national game show, and his possible connection to unsolved murders from the Zodiac killings out in California to Jimmy Hoffa to John Benet Ramsey. Stay with me.
Now, in case you don't know, Jimmy Hoffa was New York union leader who disappeared, and it's highly likely that it was a mob-related killing, not the work of this fat slob right here who's in a wheelchair.
In a minute, we're going to meet that man's grandson, Wayne Wolf, who until recently had no idea that he was related to a serial killer. But first, take a look at this.
It was arranged, it was premeditated, it was thought out, it was planned.
So you're admitting to being a cold-blooded killer then?
In fact, yeah, that's right. I'm a sick person.
Ed Edwards lived a life of crime and trauma. Edwards lost his mother through suicide at the age of 2, and later was allegedly abused by those meant to care for him. Some, including former Detective John Cameron, say these events contributed to Edwards' life as a career criminal.
He had rage, he was diagnosed a sadomasochist, and he started his life of crime.
Edwards began with small thefts, which quickly turned into jail time. In 1961, an escape from prison landed Edwards on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list. He served 5 years in prison and was released on parole. On the surface, he was reformed, a husband and father who moved on with his life. But that's exactly when John Cameron believes his killing spree took off.
As he got older, in his late 60s and 70s, he was able to groom his way into the lives of his victims so much easier because he's a harmless old man.
In 1980, a young couple was murdered on their way to a wedding. Their bodies were not found for another 2 months. 29 years later, in 2009, DNA testing matched Ed Edwards to these murders. Once caught, he also confessed to killing 3 others, including his own foster son.
That's where they both died. Put them in the van and drove off and exposed them in a cornfield.
Now, in the new documentary, It Was Him, The Many Murders of Ed Edwards, Edwards' grandson, Wayne Wolf, dives into his family's dark past.
It makes me second guess everything in my life. Do people look at me differently now knowing that I'm the grandchild of a serial killer? I need to find out if I have evil coursing through my veins. I mean, am I going to wake up one day and want to murder someone?
And crap, I do apologize. There's the ad coming.
This holiday.
I'm going to mute it and just let it run. I don't have the premium account on this channel.
Ed's grandson, Wayne Wolf, is here with me now, along with former Sergeant Detective John Cameron. Good morning to you both. Thank you so much for being here.
Morning, thanks for having me.
So let's start with that. That's a scary question. Let's go back, because you did not grow up understanding you were related to this man, Ed Edwards.
Yeah, not really. It was more of like, you knew that there was another man that provided the genetic material to your father. But, you know, my grandfather was Chuck Wolf, Clarence Wolf, the man that raised my dad. And his birth father was never in the picture, so, you know, I didn't really know his name.
Wait, so what's your dad's name?
My father is Wayne Wolf.
Okay, and his dad's, you decided to do a genealogy search.
Yeah, I was doing
And you decided to look up your paternal lineage as well.
Yeah, I was doing some research for my mom because she wanted to know more about her family. And then my dad called me and said, hey, what's up, buddy? And I told him what I was doing. And he was kind of ignorant to the technology of like, oh, you could find that stuff out? You should look into my dad. And, you know, I'll just say I'll forever be a contributor to Wikipedia.
Because so you're looking up your information, who's my grandfather? Who's my dad's dad? And it turns out your dad was adopted, and that his birth mother had expunged, that she basically erased all record of your dad's connection to his actual father, who is the serial killer. So that's how you put together your actual grandfather is the serial killer, Ed Edwards. Did you break that news to your dad?
I did.
What did he say?
we cried because, it's a really intense thing to find out, because you always wonder, was my father a hero? Was he a lawyer, a fireman? No, he's a murderer, and a very good one, to forgive the term good, very accurate, I should say.
Do you really have that fear that evil is something that's inherited?
I think, now, after going through what I went through and going on this journey with John, it's more of like, I think everyone has evil in them because, there's just something that it can just happen. I don't think that when it comes to any particular combination of genes that'll make someone evil or anything like that. I think it's more of, your environment and how you were raised and what you find to be, the proper set of morals. Or
Have you ever felt the desire to commit a crime?
Yeah, and I think everyone has. And if you don't, if you are someone that is like, I've never thought about hurting someone, I've never wanted to punch someone in the face, I've never thought about committing a crime, then you were lying to yourself, because everyone has.
I've never thought about murdering somebody.
Neither have I, but it makes you question it because, it's like the out of sight of mind, ignorance is bliss. If you were to find out that you were related directly to a potential mass murderer, you would certainly question, well, will I ever want to someday?
Yeah, you'd have that. There's no question you'd have some fear about what that meant for you. John, you have literally dedicated most of your adult life to figuring out exactly what Ed Edwards was responsible for and what he wasn't. And, you look at this guy's history. It started off, his mother killed herself when he was 2. He went to the orphanage. He claims he was physically abused. He got kicked out of the orphanage. He got kicked out of public school. He tried to join up for the Marines. He got kicked out of the Marines. He robbed. He burgled. He stole. He went to jail. He broke out twice. He convinced 3 women to marry him. He had a total of how many children? 4?
Six total,
6.
including Wayne's father.
Okay, so he had Ed Edwards Jr., to whom he was not a parent, right? How many murders ultimately have been officially pinned on him?
Officially, he's pled guilty to 5 murders, 2 of them being couples parked on lovers' lanes that he snuck up on and shot and stabbed and tortured. And then a young man that he adopted and collected $250,000 of insurance on in '96. And those murders spanned 20 years.
So there's a question about how extensive his murder spree was. The Zodiac killings. The truth is, it may be up to 20 plus, 30 plus people who were killed by the Zodiac killer.
Well, he claimed 34 in a letter in 1974.
He, the Zodiac killer?
Yes.
Whoever that may be.
Right.
What's interesting about, I don't think he's accurate about saying that the Zodiac killer took credit for 34 killings. I think it was 37, but I think the reason why he chose 34 is because murder equals 34. So the Zodiac killer actually took credit for 37 killings, I believe. So it makes me wonder how much this guy actually really knows when he's making references like that.
Okay. He claimed how many?
34 in 1974 in a letter he sent.
And are there that many unsolved
And remember,
murders?
34 in 1974, I don't even think that's accurate either. But remember, killing has gematria of 74. Just like Edwards has gematria of 74. And this gentleman, the whole premise of his theory is that Edwards is behind all these killings, including the Zodiac killings.
The people who go back and study it, could you identify that many bodies that have?
There were many, yes, and there were at least that many that I found prior to that, 70, from the time he started killing in 1945 until the time he got caught in 2009. It was unbelievable how many he killed. Just in the 8-month period he was with Wayne's grandma, he killed 8, and 2 of them in my hometown on a lover's lane. And so that was the
Well,
start.
you're conflating Ed Edwards plus the Zodiac killer, and I know you believe Ed Edwards was the Zodiac killer, right?
Yes, yes.
But let's just stay on. So the Zodiac killer may have killed over 20 or even over 30. We don't know.
Right. He took claim to 34.
Why? What is your best evidence that Ed Edwards was the Zodiac killer?
There were 2 cryptograms sent in by the Zodiac killer, one in 69
What is that?
and one in 70. They were like puzzles, and he basically said, if you solve these puzzles, you'll have my name. And in 2010, when we confronted Ed Edwards about being the Zodiac killer after we solved the 13-character cipher, Edward Edwards' name is 13 characters. And what he had done is taken the letters in his name and reversed imaged the letters as hieroglyphics. So you could never solve the Zodiac case without knowing the name Edward Edwards. And once we did, we confronted him. He sent us a letter saying, it's me. You don't know the whole story. I have a lot to tell you. And that he framed people his whole life. That was what he wanted me to know at the very beginning, is that every murder he did, he intended to frame somebody.
And is it true that his children say he would watch news reports about the Zodiac killers and have outbursts? And what were they?
Yeah, he would actually force his kids to watch movies like The Exorcist and the Zodiac movies, and then he would have outbursts when they're watching the Zodiac movies saying things like, that's not how it happened. Because he knew how it happened.
I believe Edwards is responsible for hundreds of other murders. Dozens of famous murders in the last 70 years were created by this one man, Edward Wayne Edwards.
That was former Sergeant Detective John Cameron discussing his theory about Ed Edwards on how prolific killer he may have been. He's with me now, along with Ed's grandson, Wayne Wolf. So it turns out that one of Ed Edwards' own children, who would be a half-sibling to your dad, was the one who turned him in. He had a daughter named April, who is the one who called it to the authorities' attention that he may have murdered 2 people out in California, right?
That's correct.
California,
Yes,
and that's
Wisconsin.
what he was in Wisconsin, and that's how he was ultimately put in jail. So let's just talk about the number of murders you believe, sitting here today, he was responsible for.
Well, he was free to kill for 66 years. He was in prison 14 of those years, so he wasn't probably killing then. But he would average 5 to 10 a year that he was capable of doing it. Every waking moment of his life was to kill somebody and to frame somebody.
Did he have an MO?
He would kill by knife, by rope, by gun, and by fire. And that, strangle them, stab them, burn them, shoot them. Didn't matter what age you were, what sex you were, what color you were. He created hatred with his murders. He tried to create hatred.
He was also sort of a con man. I mean, you say he liked to frame people. Playing games was part of his joy. And is it true he actually, before he was convicted of any murder, he had just had a life of stealing, he actually managed to talk his way onto a game show? Onto that show, To Tell the Truth?
Yeah, he appeared on To Tell the Truth in 1972, just before he published this book, which is called Metamorphosis of a Criminal. And this book was actually the answer to all the murders he had committed. He placed all the names, the cities, the states that he would kill in, and that he had killed in, and then he would tie all of his murders after he published this book to the book.
But that book is supposed to be about his reform. And the guy was going around lecturing at churches and schools about how he had led this life of crime, but now he was reformed. And meanwhile, he's still murdering people. All right, so let's just go through a few of these, because the Zodiac, okay, I get you on the cipher. It says Edward Edwards. But now, we know who killed Lacey Peterson. It's Scott Peterson, and he's on death row out in California right now.
Yes, he is. And actually, Lacey was killed 6 years after Joe Monet Ramsey. Edwards ties a lot of his murders to 666, killing them on 12/26 or 9/6 of 66. I mean, he tied a lot of this to the occult. Scott and Lacey Peterson, we all hated Scott Peterson. We all thought he was guilty because he was cheating on his wife. And that's how Edwards would work, is he would pick victims whose husbands or wives were cheating.
Well, how would he know that Scott Peterson was cheating on his wife at the time? That all came out later.
He was actually a doctor of psychiatry throughout his life, having offices where he would be under assumed identity, rope his victims into the office, get personal information on them, and then figure out for sometimes years in advance, how am I going to.
Well, but was he seeing Amber Fry, Scott Peterson's affair partner? I mean, like, this one seems like a big leap.
Well, that's what everybody said, and that's the one I've gotten the most stuff about. But that's where the evidence led. He's a very ritualistic killer. And when you follow his patterns and the dates he kills, Christmas, Lacey was killed on Christmas Eve. Her body was found on Palm Sunday. He stages his murders on Christian holidays, 4th of July, Memorial Days, anything that's a significant day in history.
You also suggest he may be responsible for this. It's called the Black Dahlia murder. But that happened when he was 13.
He was 13
and his family says he
old.
couldn't possibly have been in the state where it took place. I mean, do you think he began killing as young as 13?
Actually, it was a year before that. He had dismembered a little 6-year-old girl in a very similar fashion. And so Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia, was the representation of his mother, who he was there when she was killed. So he kind of spent his whole life killing women that looked like his mother and also killing children that were of his age when he was destroyed.
I want to point out the fact that that the Black Dahlia, that he's claiming the Black Dahlia was symbolic of his mother. And that's no coincidence, because mother and murder are a perfect match out of 3 of the 4 base ciphers. So, pretty interesting.
So you say killing Jimmy Hoffa, who he met in prison. What evidence do we have that he killed off Jimmy Hoffa?
He actually writes 3 pages in this book about Jimmy Hoffa. And Jimmy Hoffa called him a homosexual when he was in prison. And that's the only reason he would have needed to do it. And he actually informed the FBI on the Jimmy Hoffa case, trying to frame a guy that was a gangster out of Chicago.
I should underscore, these theories are not accepted by law enforcement. They're your belief based on years of studying this guy and, it must be said, corresponding with him in prison. May I ask you, what is the photo album?
I can feel that because it's a very personal thing in our family. When I found out about Ed and had been starting to go through everything with my father, it just randomly came up. He's like, I think I have something that my mom gave me that he made.
There's nothing in there. It's blank pages.
And it's the reason behind that. He had spent 8 months carving that in prison. And he said, put photos of our son in here someday, because I'm going to find him and I'm going to kill him. That's why those pages are empty. That's the original construction paper from 1958.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it's terrible how beautiful it is, too.
Well, he became an expert in leather works while in prison.
For 8 months.
And that's another thing that links to the Zodiac killer, who was wearing a leather mask and said he had served time in this one prison where Ed Edwards had served in the course of attempting one of his murders. You guys, thank you for being here and telling us your story. All the best to you personally as well. The show, It Was Him, The Many Murders of Ed Edwards, premieres Monday, April 16th on Paramount Network. We'll be right back.
Hello.
So, if this gentleman, James Cameron, is not 100% full of shit, he's definitely on to something, but he's pointing the finger in the wrong direction. And sorry. John Cameron, detective. I want to look into this guy a little bit. Cold case, Cameron confronted Ed Edwards. John Cameron. Edward Wayne Edwards. What's interesting about the 80 in the gematria of his full name and him being associated with evil and satanic rituals, Satan equals 80. So it's pretty interesting stuff to me. The fact that he's being blamed for the Black Dahlia murders, even when he was a teenage boy. And they say her body was mutilated with surgical precision. So, how would a 13-year-old boy have access to surgically sharp tools? And they say the blood was drained from her body. I mean, it's just such a ridiculous theory. And it's being the attention is being drawn towards the wrong person when it should be pointed towards other people. Not just one people, but a group of people. And I think we all know who they are. In case you didn't know, Elizabeth Short's body was found in Leimert Park. You see Society of Jesus equals 56. Leimert Park equals 56. And Leimert Park was on Norton Avenue. Also equals 56. And isn't it interesting how all these things that they claim are going down in light of how we know the way the occult operates in hidden messages and signs and symbols, how you get all these coded messages in a lot of letters, like how the Zodiac operated in through a code. And we know who else operates through a code. So I 100% guarantee that this fat old slob was not behind all these murders. So he's basically trying to say that he snuck into the Ramsey home and was able to lure Jean Benet down into the basement or wherever her body was found undetected, write this ransom note, and then completely take off and completely get away with it. And then the only person that's able to trace him back to it is this random detective guy who's really connecting a lot of dots that aren't there when he should be connecting it somewhere else. And another thing that he's trying to say is the fact that Ed Edwards was behind the murder of oh gosh, sorry, what was her name? The person that Stephen Avery is accused of murdering Teresa Halbach. And in case you haven't seen Making a Murderer on Netflix, I highly recommend that you go and watch it, because it's very insightful as to how easy it is to frame someone for murder. And this gentleman right here, Stephen Avery, was 100% framed for something that he did not do. So this is such a ridiculous concept that Ed Edwards is behind all these murders, when really it's a group of people. And Ed Edwards is symbolic of that because of his 83 gematria encoded within his name. And murder is 83 and 38. So yeah, kind of crazy stuff. But yeah, I just wanted to get that out there. And let people know that there is something going on. That all these, in a way, all these murders are connected, from the Black Dahlia to the Zodiac killings to any killing that's done in a very ritualistic fashion. The Lacey Peterson murder, the Jean Bonnet murder, they're all connected in one way, and it's through this practice right here. Gematria. So yeah, I think that's all I got for this one. Peace.